So you are also the you're the founder of the National Association
Yes,
for
something
Empowerment
called,
of
yes,
African
but it's
people.
not active right now. But we didn't get the assistance. But yes, I don't know, around 1990 or so, we formed this organization to talk about the empowerment of African people, promote black things and so on. Did very well for about 10 years, but we never got the assistance.
Yeah, no, I know there's some people that, through your fight for African empowerment, they call you racist. Right?
Okay.
I think Satmaraj had alluded to it now and then, but just to clear the air between racism and empowerment, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but I think racism is the want for, I guess, your group of people to triumph at the detriment of those around you. Whereas where you were fighting for empowerment, you were saying, listen, blacks and Africans in Trinidad need to empower themselves, make themselves better from within, not to the detriment of those around them, but so in the end, they will be in a better position to help those around them and
Yeah.
contribute more to society.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think anybody that comes across this, you need to keep that difference in mind,
Yeah, but you mean, racism is where you act in a very negative way towards other people. In other words, when you say in the South, or say American racism is how they treat other people. But to do that, you have to have power. If you got no power, you can't treat nobody anyhow. Indians could talk about power, French could talk about, blacks can't because they don't have the kind of wealth in terms of jobs and so on. But apart from simply the power dimension, there's also a pride dimension. That black were never proud of themselves. You couldn't wear African clothes. I mean, you've seen that now. You couldn't wear African clothes. They thought they would go back to the jungle. So at a certain point in our history, we looked on everything black and African. And we were saying, well, look up. I went to an African film festival last night. They buried, I think, a guy called Cudjoe, my name, but K-O-J rather than C-U-D-J-O-E. And they're talking about the beautiful images of Africa, because everybody always told our story. They never told the story of the others. And whenever they told our story, they told it through the eyes of the other. So it was very important for us to tell our own story. And, of course, to recognize our links and connections with the home country. And that's what we're talking about. But it was not at the expense of anyone else. So to be pro-black doesn't mean you have to be pro-racist. It means being pro-self.
Yeah, so
every group was, So that's what we were talking about.
right. So being pro-black is just more about preserving your culture, the same way everybody else preserves their culture.
So, for example, in the Chinese, they have their own Chinese association. You got the Portuguese association, because folks recognize. It's just a natural human instinct. People come together to preserve their own. And once you do that, you can live with others. It doesn't mean you have to be against. If you look at my house, we have there the Indians in the back, Hindus in the back of Muslims. So we live together all the time.
But there's also, especially in Trinidad, there's a beauty in making sure your culture is preserved, because
right.
you don't want to just lose it.
Yeah, because as I said, if you lose it, you're
obscurity of
nothing.
history.
You're nothing. Without your history, you're nothing. One of the reasons, for example, why the Hindus, the Indians have been so important, they've had their culture, they've had their religion. And that's been a very powerful element in their progress.
Yeah,
because
because
they share common values.
Yeah, because if you look at most of our results for national tests like Common Entrance, CXC, A-levels, most times is Hindus that either on top or near the top, because they have a strong sense of
But it wasn't always that
identity
way.
and self.
It wasn't always that way.
Really?
It wasn't always that way. The time when the Indian girls didn't go to school. I lived in Tagani, working in Orange Grove. The men walked in front, the women walked behind. It's only with the building of the Mahasabah schools in 1953 that they began to rise. But before, everything was just simply black teachers, black everything. So when they began to build the Mahasabah schools under Badi Sagan Maharaj, that, of course, it changed the whole thing. But up until that time, the dominant force or the educational force were blacks, not Indians. So that changed in time, which is, of course, another lesson you learn. Nothing remains static.
Yeah. If you especially these days, if you stay stagnant for 5 years, that's it.
Everything changes.
Yeah.
So that's where that is. So The question is, I mean, he could do a big book about why that change took place, which I'm not going to get into right now. But the fact is, it hasn't always been so. That's my point.
So one thing I was always curious about, so you were fighting for the empowerment of blacks and Africans, and this is in the 1990s, right? But we got independence in 1962, and between 1962 and 1990, we were almost basically exclusively led by black prime ministers.
Yeah.
So
What
why?
happened?
What happened? Why wasn't more done to make blacks empowered by then with 30
Well,
years
they
of
never.
black leadership?
Eric Williams talked about. I mean, remember, Rich, you want to talk about. We talk a bit about history, but the second thing to understand about history is process, not stasis. Things change in time. When Williams came here, the power was not about blacks or Indians, but about independence, because your colonial state run by Britain. Blacks didn't have any positions. It was run by an executive committee. It was all white-led. We had no power. We didn't even go to school. In fact, we could only vote. The first blacks and locals who got to participate in the league to be voted for was 1925. In 1846, first universal adult suffrage in 1846. When you could vote. Before that, you couldn't vote. Or very few. You had to sit in kinds of qualities. In 1955, when Williams came and so on, you have now, for the first time, you have parties and so on. And so Williams becomes the prime minister. His object is not to empower black people, Indian people. It's to empower the whole country. Because you've been a colonial force. In 1995 or 94, 1955, you have the very powerful move, the Bandung Conference in Indonesia, where black and brown people come together to demand their freedom and their liberation. That's the move, not just black or Indian. So when Williams came, it wasn't to empower blacks, it was to empower all of us. That was the idea. So Williams have no sense of just blackness. However, in so doing, that's why he had black power. Because even though he had independence, black people could still work at the banks. It was still a white thing. So that's why he had black power in 69, 70.
Yeah, because that is something that I could just never wrap my head around. We had a black prime minister that got our independence, and then we still had black power movements in 1969.
Yes.
Like,
because
why was
remember, get history's process, and contradictions are the law of life. There's always be a contradiction. I have got students, for example, who are relevant women. I teach at women's college. They're feminist, but they go and look at this guy Brown who slapped Rihanna. So I say, well, how could you feminist, Chris Brown slap Rihanna? I still wanted to see Chris Brown. I said, well, Professor Cudjoe, we're not listening to Chris Brown. We want to hear the music. A contradiction.
Yeah, so they separate the artist from the music.
But I'm saying that's a contradiction. So even though Williams, of course, represented the movement towards empowerment and so on, he didn't pay particular attention to black people, even though that was his base. So and how was that manifested? Blacks didn't own banks. They couldn't work at banks. They were in control. And black folks says, listen, what's going on here? We're in power when we have nothing. And so then that's when they revolted, of course. I said it takes place in conjunction with what's happening in the United States. But that was the whole power around the world, that black folks and Indian folks and brown folks need to be empowered. So then there's a further entrenchment, of the fight for black independence. So it was not country, but it was country in the sense that, and of course loyalists would say that they were Afro-Saxon. Even though they were black, they possessed a lot of European values.
Yeah, because they were basically ruled by the British and the Europeans for so long that
But not even
I guess that
ruled,
would be
they
part
went
of
to
their,
school. They
culture.
went to school. I mean, what schooling is? Schooling gives you values and culture. Not just ABC and so on,
Yeah, that's
When
the
we went-
soft curriculum.
Yeah, but when I went to school, you had the first always religious knowledge, where you inculcate values. So in 1954, my sister, born in, I think, 53 or something like 55. When Princess Margaret came down to Trinidad, we were given little flags to go wave flags because we were subjects of the crown. She came down the MP Road. We used to call it the MP Road, the Beetham, whatever. Not the Beetham, the Churchill Roosevelt. We had to wave flags and they gave us some little buns. But what the British were good at is get into your head. So when you have all of those values, you just can't drop it because you got independence. That's the big fight.
Yeah, you basically have those. You basically indoctrinated with those
I
prejudices.
got your head. That's all I
Yeah.
need.
Yeah.
You marry a woman, all he needs is a woman head. She marry you, she needs your head. You could say what you want to say. Once I got your head. So anyhow, so there were a lot of us were still under the British value systems, you want to call it that. And so the fight for independence became a long fight, which you have people still carrying the old, like this, the old media and social media. A lot of us, I know guys who still go in the mornings at 6 o'clock, buy the 3 papers and read them. I still get the 3 papers, but the young people are reading that.
Yeah, I don't know anybody my age reading newspapers.
That's what I'm saying. So
Yeah,
that's the so the different.
I don't know
things.
anybody my age that watches the 7 o'clock news. I'm sure we have some out
Yeah,
there,
no,
but
but
in my circle,
But what you're saying is
most
exactly
of
what
my
I'm
friends will do
saying.
it.
It changes. So even though they had independence, and I mean, they're going to take a good 10, 15 years because everybody gets off of that and have the, read and social calm. So that was what happened. Was happening there. And then in 60, you have suddenly the Black Power thing and more empowered and so on. And you keep on going. And of course, that movement itself spans its time until you have the takeover. Was it 1980 when you have the takeover of Abu Bakr or whatever?
1989, July. It's 1989.
But then you had Shah
1990,
before. You had Shah before. That was during the Black Power thing. And then you have... So it's always there's that progress because people saying we are saying independence, but people are not getting the benefit of it. It doesn't matter whether you have a black government or a pink government or a white government. When you got money, you won't have a job. You won't be able to get food for your kids.
Yeah.
So the blackness has nothing to do with it. What are the results? And when people are fed up, they're going to rise up.